Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the Manchester is Red podcast, brought to you by the Manchester Evening News. My name is Dan Murphy, and joining me today, as ever, is Mr. Samuel Luckhurst. Samuel, how's it going?
Very well, thank you, Dan. How are you?
Great as rain. Me had a scare this morning when I got locked in my bathroom briefly, but with some good old A-team engineering, I managed to escape with the use of some scissors. So I'm free and available to this podcast, thankfully. It was looking very hairy at one moment. And also with me today, looking like he's locked in some sort of room, but hopefully not as badly as I was, is Mr. Rich Fay. Rich, how's it going?
Yeah, if you're watching this on the video, like Murph, I'll do your job for you, that you can watch on YouTube. It does look like a big sort of industrial pack of toilet rolls over my shoulder, but I can assure you it's a bed I'm trying to get rid of on Facebook Marketplace, but it is the unmovable bed. Nobody wants it, offering it for free, offered it to neighbours. Nobody is even replying to the messages. So if anyone wants a bed, just let me know, okay? We are trying to get rid of it.
Well, there you go. Exactly, listeners. Yeah. Do not say we don't ever do anything for you. If you need a bed, give Rich a little tweet on Twitter
it's a double split base, but it's got a lock system. It's all good. It was all good. But I only got rid of it because I wanted a bed with under storage. So
Look at that. And if you want to see what the bed looks like, just go over to YouTube. As Rich says, it's Manchester Evening News - Man United. You can see this podcast in living colour, and you can do a bit of shopping at the same time. What a result that is, and what a result it was, ladies and gentlemen, for Manchester United on Wednesday. 3-0 over Nottingham Forest in the first leg of the Carabao Cup semi-final. They got an early lead through Marcus Rashford as his hot form continues. There was a little wobble when it looked like Sam Surridge had equalised, but it was correctly ruled out for offside. And that little wobble was ended by Wout Weghorst, first goal for United just before the break to kind of kill off the game, and Bruno Fernandes perhaps killed off the tie in the final minutes of the match with a thumping finish. Samuel, how was the game?
It was great just to go to the City ground for the first time. You might have been there following the mighty Bolton, but the last time United played there was obviously that game in '99 that Forest fans are probably sick to death of hearing about. But it was a good setup there. The atmosphere wasn't that great, really, because of the timing of both of United's goals in the first half. The first one came so quickly. Terrific run from Rashford, who practically petrified Worrell into allowing him to have that one-on-one. And then the second one right at the end of half-time, just before half-time, when Forest had a good 15 or 20-minute spell and had got the crowd up at that point. That really did kill the game that night. And then, as you said, with Fernandes' goal coming in the 89th or the 90th minute, that's practically killed the tie. Steve Cooper afterwards was resigned to that without saying it. He was very realistic about Forest's chances going into the second leg. For United, it comes at a good time in this week after two disappointing results in the league last week. They've got cup games. They've won one very convincingly. They should beat Reading, and then with the Forest second leg on Wednesday, they can rest a couple of more players, you would think, ahead of resuming the Premier League schedule against Palace next Saturday, and then it's those that enticing double-header against Leeds, and then it's a double-header against Barcelona. So this period is pretty crucial, really, in terms of squad management, and that was chiefly down to the result in midweek. It was, I suppose, from United fans' perspective, it was refreshing to actually go away from home and win convincingly. That was the first time they'd won a domestic away game by more than one goal, and they needed to buck that trend sooner rather than later. Forest was always a good opportunity to do that, and also it was a better result than it possibly appeared. I mean, Forest are not only 13th in the Premier League now, they hadn't lost at home, which certainly surprised. Somebody mentioned it to me at the ground, but it was overall a good night for United, and from a journalistic perspective, good as well. Quite an easy one to cover, in that the game was won quickly, and Ty got Weghorst in the mix zone afterwards. So I think every box was ticked as far as that was concerned.
Absolutely, it was certainly a good afternoon, and Rich, they're not in the final yet, even though they pretty much are, and they still have a final to win, of course, and it could be a difficult game if Newcastle kind of finish off the job they started on Tuesday. But if United do, the Carabao Cup's often maligned, often looked down upon. But as we've seen, City have shown over the last few years, it's a really important trophy to win for winning teams, because it just breeds that sort of hunger, that desire, that kind of will to win. And if you look at when United last won a trophy in 2017, they won the League Cup first before then going on to win the Europa League under Jose Mourinho. So it's a really important step for United, and to finally get that monkey off the back for Ten Hag so early, should they go on and win it, of course, should they go on and get to the final, would be massive. And that's probably why he continues to name really strong teams in these games and has done all tournament, even though you'd probably think there'll be a few changes.
Yeah, I mean, United are in no position to pick and choose what trophies they want to win, are they? They haven't won one, like you said, there since 2017. And, under Solskjaer, the fact they lost that final against Villarreal, you always think what could have been otherwise. They also lost in the semi-final of the Europa League, and United just then had this mentality of being a team who just weren't quite finished, who were losers really, a team that weren't winning trophies at all. And United this season, look at what they could have won or what they can win. They've never been or never will want to win the Premier League. So they only had 3 trophies they could actually win. There's always going to be mitigation. There's going to be a bit of luck in terms of your draw, who you get, if there's injuries, into how far you can go in the cup competition. So it's difficult to ever plan a cup run and say this is the priority, we've got to win this. So teams are always going to be a bit cautious when they sort of set out ambitions to win the cup, because if United said we want to win the League Cup and they got City in the third round, well, that dream could have died there and then. So you always have to be a bit cautious. But like you said, winning breeds success, and it can be a springboard for further success. And for me as well, particularly following a team from the lower leagues, I just do not know how any team can poo-poo the chance of winning a trophy, particularly in the modern age where they've got so many players at their disposal. United could change their 11 and still have a real good chance of getting to the quarterfinals, last 4 of any cup competition domestically. So I think United just need to give it their all now. They're going to be the favourites to win it. They've got to deal with that pressure, and I suppose that has been the pressure that they are yet to sort of cope with under Ten Hag. There still has been this element of being the underdogs and proving a lot of people wrong this season. So if they want to get that mindset of being the top team in England again, then they have to deal with winning under pressure. And like you said, it looks like United have 1 foot in the final. I think from the neutral point of view, it'd be great to see them against Newcastle. Newcastle, the only team I think in the top European leagues this season have kept more clean sheets than United. So it's going to be really interesting if that is to be the final. Of course, they drew 0-0 earlier in the season, so you'd expect it to be quite a tight game. But from United's point of view, it couldn't have gone much better in midweek.
Mm-hmm. And it certainly couldn't have gone much better, Samuel, for Wout Weghorst. He gets his first goal, and it's been interesting to see how he's fitting in well at United so far. 3 games, 3 starts. I don't think, obviously, the Marshall injuries kind of changed things, but I don't think any of us expected, when it was clear he was coming in through the door, him to be starting quite as regularly as he has been. But he's fitting quite well to the team. He isn't the kind of lumbering target man being signed by the old Burnley might suggest. He's much more wanting the ball on his feet, and it looks like he's really helping like Rashford and Antony, who we'll come on to as well, kind of get involved more. His link-up play seems really, really sharp.
He is the cliche good touch for a big man, really. But even I was surprised by just how on point, if you like, his link-up play is. The touch is always measured. They're always quite prompt. It's often 1 touch, very rarely 2 touch, which obviously is aligned with what Ten Hag wants in that area of the pitch. And I suppose up until he got the goal, United were... He was quite a reliable funnel for United to go through. It was quite smooth, but the tap was turned off because he wasn't looking like a goal threat. But he took his goal pretty well the other night, and all of a sudden the tap was turned on. I mean, it was an easy finish, but he was in the right area. He was ahead of Antony. That's what you need from a striker. And as Ten Hag said afterwards, strikers are always going to be judged on whether they're scoring or not. And they would have got to a point with Weghorst had he gone, I don't know, 4 or 5 games without a goal, where all of a sudden you wonder, well, what's his purpose in the team? But they've got a couple of players like that. Ten Hag said earlier in the week that United are a better team with Antony, which I agree with, but there had been issues with Antony's form up until, I'd say, the Forest game, where he was much improved and there are more variations about his play. And it's the same that applies to the other Antony and Marshall, in that when United have him, the coaching staff really admire his pressing triggers. That's not necessarily shared by the match goers. They got annoyed a couple of times during the derby a couple of weeks ago because Marshall wasn't pressing Ederson when they thought he should have been. But that's an aspect of his game that United really rate. And of course he is a more mobile forward than Weghorst. But when you look at Marshall's injuries this season and the amount of games he's missed recently as well, that's maybe up for debate. But he is always, as long as he's fit, you would think he will always start ahead of Weghorst. The trouble is when he has started consistently, he has been inconsistent and he's not been as reliable in front of goal as he was during those sporadic appearances earlier in the season when he was either getting a goal or he was either getting an assist. So there are a few players like that, but for Weghorst to have fit in as quickly as he has done mid-season has to be a bonus, because sometimes a mid-season addition, there have been plenty of tales of players disrupting the balance of a team. For United most recently, Alexis Sanchez would have been one, because he was another left winger and they already had two quite young at the time left wingers in Marshall and Rashford, and it meant one would have to go to the right or Sanchez would have to go to the right, and the rhythm of the team was compromised and the balance was as well. So with Weghorst, he knows his place. He said to Ty afterwards and other colleagues who spoke to him in the mix zone that he would like to stay permanently, which is an obvious thing for him to say. And you could certainly see some merit in keeping him on a permanent basis, as long as United do get in a long-term number 9 who's going to be playing ahead of him. And they've already got one in Marshall, but he's proven to be far too brittle, and his injury issues do extend. I think they date back to pretty much almost 2 years. Towards the end of the 2020-21 season, he missed a large chunk of that running.
Yeah, I agree. I wrote the same myself today, actually, how Weghorst, from what, if he continues playing like he is doing, there'd be nothing wrong with signing him permanently. He's a different option, seems to be an experienced head, seems to be a good character in the dressing room that is already kind of forging bonds with his teammates. I believe he said something about how he's really getting on with Rashford, and you can kind of see that on how they link up on the pitch. But it needs to be, if he does sign, as you say, Samuel, he can't be the only striker, obviously. I mean, United have been stuck in this kind of self-perpetuating cycle for the last, going on 3 years now, ever since they signed Iqbal as a short-term option, then they got Cavani as a short-term option, then they got Ronaldo as a short-term option, and now Ten Hag has had no choice but to keep the cycle going with Weghorst, given Ronaldo's exit, Rich. So it wouldn't be at all a bad idea if he did stay, and he's looked good so far, but it cannot be the only one. They can't afford to not get that striker that they've desperately needed for a few years in the summer.
No, and you'd say United need 2 forwards this summer, definitely. And like you said, I think it would make sense for Weghorst to be one of them. It was interesting that earlier this week, Ten Hag said that United play their best football of Antony Marshall. Of course, he's been absent for 18 of their games already this season. He's unreliable in terms of goals and availability. So you'd say that if United play their best football of Marshall, then this summer they should be buying an upgrade on Marshall, maybe a more mobile striker, someone who does sort of link up with that fluid forward play that we saw in pre-season, and then you have Weghorst, who offers something a bit different in reserve there. So you'd probably maybe argue that United's priority this summer is to sign a Marshall upgrade, someone who can do his job really. And then, I mean, again, I know that Ten Hag says he's a big fan of Marshall, but what's this, 8 years now he's been at United? He's getting into testimonial territory. Still, he's had one year, 1.5, 2 years max of good football at United. It's just no other team, no other top club in Europe would stick by him this long. And if United have genuine aspirations of going to the next level, then I'm sorry, but Antony Marshall just can't cut it anymore, because he's just so unreliable. Yes, he's great on this day. We all know that. We all know how good he can be, but he's just not good enough, regular enough. So United need to move on. They can't be, nostalgic about this. They've got to be ruthless, and I'm encouraged that Ten Hag will make those decisions, the hard ones to make. And for me, on the striker front, Weghorst has, like we said, done enough. Good option to have in reserve, no harm in that. But they need a serious elite striker still. And for me, it would make sense to move Marshall on it and get one of those in, and have him and Weghorst.
Have you written that piece yet, Rich?
I basically wrote that in a way this morning, saying that Ten Hag's hinted at the type of striker he wants. If he says Marshall is the striker he wants the most in the team, and they play best of him, they need someone in that mould. But yeah, maybe I need to wait for Marshall to fire another blank, and then I can really hammer home that he needs to leave. But maybe I'll save that for the podcast now.
Oh, yeah, get your notes, lad. Get that reserved for when the next opinion inevitably calls. But yeah, I think the agonising thing is with Marshall, as you say there, we know he's good. We know, I know it's a long few months ago now, but at the start of the season when he was on the field, he was starting so well, he was playing so well, scoring, and that's the issue, isn't it? Like, you hold on to that hope, and it's the hope that kills you. And I kind of agree. It's hard to see United building long-term success around Marshall just because he's not reliable enough. And another player who was in danger of kind of going into that inconsistent territory, Samuel, was Antony. He's moved in the summer, and obviously it takes time to adapt coming from the Eredivisie and whatnot. But I think there was definitely an air of frustration growing around him. Was it in the Arsenal game he missed a really good chance, and it was that kind of tone of groan from the fans where you can just tell, like, come on, you should be doing better there, and why can't you use your right foot and stuff. There was those grumblings kind of coming out, and I think judgments were being made on Antony. Ten Hag, as you've mentioned, said he's good for the team, but he needs to kind of play better individually, and as you say, he finally kind of had a bit of a better display against Forest.
He was, and it was interesting that clip of Arteta talking about wingers and where they should be positioned when they receive the ball went viral after the Arsenal game, because that's what Arsenal do with Saka, and what United were doing with Antony was the opposite, in that his back was to the touchline, he wasn't facing goal, he was limited as to what he could do. I think Gary Neville said in his podcast afterwards that Antony was predictable, and I think he probably echoed a lot of, if not the majority of United supporters in their view of him at that point. He doesn't look the quickest either, but at Forest he did mimic Arjen Robben, and Robben is proof that being predictable can also be irrepressible if you are quick enough on the ball and you're direct enough. And Antony was more like that against Forest, and the two opportunities he had, he should have scored when he went through, and he just didn't get the elevation on it to beat Wayne Hennessy. And when with Weghorst's goal, he occupies that zone that Fernandes is usually in to tee himself up for the volley, and Hennessy parries it out, and Weghorst puts it in. So his performance was, there were a lot more variations with his performance against Forest. And I asked Ten Hag about his form on Tuesday, and Ten Hag said quite legitimately that United are better with Antony in the team, but he did need to do he can do even better, I think was the quote that he used. And he did say he needs to be more direct, and what Ty and I noticed at Selhurst Park last week, which the press box is pretty much adjacent with the end that United were attacking in the first half, was that Antony was collecting the ball probably on the halfway line, so too deep really, and he was just running down the line. Tyrone Mitchell was doing a very vigilant job there of keeping Antony on his right foot, and if he's doing that, he's just running into a cul-de-sac, and so he didn't really get anywhere against Palace. And one of the best pieces of play he's done all season was at Wolves, where he came inside, he switched the play to Garnacho, and then he moved into the area and he got on the end of Garnacho's cross, and he probably should have scored. It was quite a tame header that went straight at Jose Sarr. So he has got the potential to do it, but he just doesn't do it enough. And I look back at the quotes Ten Hag gave after Antony scored against Everton at Goodison, when obviously he matched this record of scoring his first 3 Premier League games, and he was actually quite critical of his contribution, but in a very constructive way. And everything he said that he needs to do that night, he still needs to do. But he did take literal steps in the right direction at Forest, and that he was getting the ball on the half turn, he was facing goal, he was a lot quicker with the ball at his feet, and he wasn't up against a slouch of a left back either in Renan Lodi. I know something has clearly gone wrong for him to be on loan at Forest from Atletico Madrid, but it wasn't even a year ago that he was absolutely outstanding for Atletico in both of their Champions League ties against United. So he's no mug, even though something, as I say, has clearly gone all right for him to have gone from Madrid to Nottingham. But he's a quality left back, And so, as I said, it was steps in the right direction for Antony in a literal case, and he needs to maintain that though now, because as I say, I think watching him this season, he's probably not produced a genuine 8 out of 10 performance yet. He's had a couple of good performances. Tottenham always springs to mind, but that was a night where just about everybody played brilliantly in a United shirt. So the scrutiny was inevitable after last week and 2 disappointing results and him being substituted in both of them. And of course, United overspent on him. So that's not his fault, but that is always going to generate a bit more attention around his form.
Absolutely. Well, another winger, Rich, who's kind of making steps in the right direction is Facundo Pellistri. He came in for just his second United appearance over 2 years since joining the club against Forest, and he got a bit of a longer chunk than he did against Charlton, about 20 minutes here, more than the 6 he did in that match. Didn't manage to get an assist this time, but nearly did when he put in a great delivery for Weghorst, whose header just didn't quite go in. Played himself into trouble a few times, kind of losing the ball in a few dangerous areas, but promising, and it seems like Ten Hag has kind of inclinated that he'll be staying at the club now at least for the rest of the season. If he continues to make progress, it gives United just so many more options that Ten Hag maybe didn't actually have a few weeks ago. You know, Elanga coming on to get a great assist as well for that third goal. Pellistri, if he can kind of come in and keep making good contributions, no matter kind of what level of opponent it is, it's just good for United that they do have a lot more options they can use and Ten Hag can depend on when they perhaps didn't have. When you look back to when Ronaldo left in December, it was kind of panic stations a little bit. It looked like United had nothing. But he's not done anything amazing yet. Don't let's not get ahead of ourselves or anything. But he's certainly showing he can contribute.
It's certainly early days, isn't it? I mean, like you said, it's half an hour of competitive first team football he's got under his belt. So there's a measure of you need to ease your expectations there. And of course, the 2 games he's come on in have already been won. So, it's a different environment when you go into a game and you have that freedom to run at a tired defence and you can, just play with confidence against a defence who are down on their luck, really. So the next test for him has to be to start a game. You'd like to think that will come maybe across the next 2 matches. You'd perhaps say that the second leg of the Carabao Cup semi-final is the more obvious one because there's a 3-goal cushion there, whereas Reading this weekend is a game that United will probably go stronger than most fans would have liked because, it's still going to be one of those games where you've got to pay respect to the opponent, you can't get complacent. I think Pellistri certainly has something different to offer, doesn't he? He's a very contrasting winger to that of Antony, who is inverted, likes to link up, likes to cut inside and have a shot at goal himself, whereas Pellistri, he likes to do that as well to a degree, but he's someone who likes to hug the byline as well, take men on and get crosses into the box. So it's definitely good to have an alternative on the right wing, and it's fascinating for United that the dynamic of signing Ahmad and Pellistri and wondering if either of them had a future at United, they're now both effectively fighting to be the backup option on the right wing next season. It's a really interesting sort of dynamic there, both doing well and playing the best football of their senior career, really. So Pellistri has work to do. Like I said, I would like to see him start a game and get a better and fairer sort of assessment of how good he really is. But yeah, you can't poo-poo what he's done so far. There's a lot of positives to take. He looks like a lively, hard-working winger. It would have been a real shame had he left the club this month permanently or on loan and we hadn't seen him make his debut for United. It's testament to him that he stayed professional throughout that period of time. He's had a real good work ethic and approach. He's not been kicking up too much fuss, and now he's got his chance and he's taken it. Like I said, I think you need to ease expectations. It's half an hour of football, so we can't get too carried away, but certainly exciting and certainly a role to play over the coming weeks.
Absolutely, it'd be interesting to see. And finally, on the 3-0 win, Samuel, I know you wanted to kind of give some praise to Lisandro Martinez, who's looking like he's really getting back in the groove now after a few weeks waiting to get back into the team after his World Cup celebrations.
He's been one of the signings of the season, and as far as a Premier League team of the year goes, you'd probably have him in there with Saliba, and United are fortunate that they've got one of the best partnerships around in Martinez and Varane. I thought Martinez was United's best player at Arsenal. He got the man of the match against Forest in midweek, deservedly so there. It was a matter of time, as you say, until he was going to get reintegrated into the team. I think Ten Hag even said he was building him up when I think it might have been around the derby or just after the derby, because he came on later than intended. He was due to come on at 1-0 and then he eventually came on with United 2-1 up. But as far as Ten Hag's hit rate goes, if he was to ever want to make a case why he should be backed, Martinez is the perfect example of that, because he played under him. There were eyebrows raised over the fee. Obviously, everybody is aware of the post-mortem at Brentford, and his height did matter that day. They did get undone at a set piece, but there are a few teams like Brentford, and the size hasn't mattered since. And however the way he operates, it's just extremely impressive, and he's been a bit of a cult figure among the fan base for a few months now. But looking at the first goal at the time, Rashford's goal in midweek, I remember at the time Malacia was trying to tell Martinez to play it safe, and I think if the ball was with another centre-back, they'd have gone back to the goalkeeper, but he waited for that little opening to come up, and then he was able to play the ball forward, set United on their way, and a few seconds later they're 1-0 up. So although Rashford rightly got the bulk of the credit for another fine piece of play by him, it was also it was underpinned by Martinez waiting for that opportunity and showing that adventure to get the ball forward and get United onto the attack.
Absolutely. Well, it's 1 foot in the final for United, and they'll be looking to take a step in, get into another one on Saturday when they take on 14th place Championship side Reading. Paul Ince back at Old Trafford, bringing the Royals to Manchester. And it's another annoying late kick-off for United. You can't just have a 3 o'clock. That would be a sacrilege, wouldn't it? But it looks like it could be an interesting match for United, Rich. It'll be intriguing to see what sort of team Ten Hag goes for. As you mentioned yourself there, the Dutchman tends to name a very kind of strong side. He hasn't really changed much. A Van der Beek here, a Lindelof there aside. He doesn't really tend to make...
Sounds like a nursery rhyme, that almost, doesn't it?
Listen, I don't want to end up on football
sounds like
cliche.
Old MacDonald had a farm, actually. Sounds like the bridge to that.
You're going to get me on football cliches, and I don't need that dubious honour in my life, so let's end that there. He doesn't like to swap his teams that much, but especially in the weekend sense. But will we see many areas? So it's obviously a mid-table dwelling Championship team. Could we see maybe Iqbal coming in here, or Pellistri, Mainoo, Garnacho, you'd like to think, maybe even Harry Maguire, and of course Jadon Sancho might be involved for the first time in quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think every United fan will want to see the youngsters given a chance, but my inclination will probably be that they'll feature from the bench, because Ten Hag, like we said, has so many senior players in reserve who aren't getting minutes either, that you'd say that maybe they're the priority of getting minutes under their belts. In goal, it could see a change. I know we've seen a few sort of rotations in the cup competitions already. You got Butland and Heaton there, both deserve to be playing in these sort of matches. In defence, the fullback situation, there's not really any scope for rotation there, because Dallow's been ruled out and Shaw is still a doubt. Centre-backs, Maguire, Lindelof, maybe they're a partnership who at least know how to play alongside each other, and you can rest the sort of big hitters for the league schedule that's coming up. And you'd probably say that's the same in midfield, where Fred and McTominay might be the sort of reluctant choice because they are used to playing alongside each other. And the fact is that Bruno Fernandes is one booking away from a suspension. So if you're going to drop a senior midfielder, it'd probably be Casemiro and him, and you'd probably play Eriksen in the maybe more advanced role, where he's not really impressed at United so far. He's been much better when he's played deeper, I thought. And up front, again, you're quite limited in terms of senior striking options there. Weghorst surely will need a rest at some point. Rashford, he's playing so well now, the temptation is to drop him, but I'm not sure he'll actually want to be dropped. He'll just want to score as many goals as he can. He might be better off the bench. Garnacho, you'd expect him to start. We mentioned Pellistri, but you wouldn't be surprised if Elanga started over him, and he just doesn't look like scoring goals at all. Like we said, it's nearly a year since he did last score in the first team for United. So I've got a feeling that it'll be the sort of senior players who are involved. And on Sancho, I can't see him being thrown right back in from the start. I mean, there's always going to be a bit of ambiguity about how successful his sort of training period's been, how fit he is now physically. If he's up to the challenge of being thrown in from the start, it won't do him any favours if he's rushed back when he's not quite up to it. I think they need to ease him back for his own sake, really, because if he starts against Reading, takes a while to sort of bed in, then he could be at square one again, where fans are getting on his back, people asking what was the point of having all this time off. So I'd ease Sancho back into proceedings, getting up to speed over the next few weeks, and then maybe you're in a position to unleash him. But yeah, I've just got a feeling it's going to be one of those boring FA Cup Saturday night games, and you built it up more excited than I am, because let's put it this way, if I wasn't at the game, there's no way I'd be watching it.
Listen, I'm not at the game.
You're excited for Sunday, Rich, aren't you?
Yeah, Magic of the Cup on Sunday, where we get to watch.
It's all about the race course on Sunday.
Exactly, and that is one Championship team I'm looking forward to watching, Sheffield United, rather than Reading, because in the last round, Wrexham had Coventry, and I didn't realise they were a Championship team till the draw was made, and it was a great win, a great away day, but it wasn't very glamorous.
No, but at least you've got cup ties to go to, mate, so chin up, chin up. Samuel, what have you made of this kind of Sancho... the whole situation? It's quite a unique one for a manager just to, when there's not really a specific injury, just to take, and it's quite, I think it's quite a smart thing to do. He's taken the player out of the firing line completely, giving him as much time as he can possibly need to get fit and ready, either physically or mentally. And it's quite, as I say, it's quite a unique approach to managing a player, and hopefully it'll bear fruit. I think it's consistent with how Ten Hag's been doing things, in that he's not quite as orthodox as every other manager, but literally pretty much every single thing he's done so far has proven to be correct.
The staff have spoken quite highly of Sancho. They've not seen him as a problem or anything like that. And the way it was told to me was that Ten Hag pretty much had a chat with him and said, look, what do you need? What can I do for you? And they agreed on this curated training program in the Netherlands. Ten Hag recommended some coaches out there. I'm not sure exactly how long he was out there, but he first travelled to the Netherlands in, I think it was late November, and he was still there in December whilst United were in Spain for their training camp. So he was probably there for at least a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And it has been a long wait for him to come back into the team. Certainly when I was at Carrington to interview Fernandez a couple of weeks ago, I was on this balcony just being shown to this room, and there were a couple of players on bikes in the gym, and one of them looked to be him, and that was an indication that he was still not back in squad training. He has been training, doing ball work, training with teammates for over a week now. So this is a logical opportunity to reintegrate him back into the squad. I certainly agree with Rich that starting him is out of the question, and going off the way Ten Hag replied to questions about Sancho today, I don't think there's a cat and hell's chance of that either. And the way that managers go about reintegrating a player back into the team, it very rarely happens that all of a sudden a player who's not played for 3 months is back in the starting 11. They do tend to be eased back in, and it's been a long wait for Sancho. He's not played since October the 22nd, that draw at Chelsea. I'm not sure the clocks had even gone back at that point, so that's how long we're talking. And it's clearly there must be another issue, but you have to respect the privacy and of the individual, and he's fully entitled to that. And Ten Hag has spoken about it being a physical issue and a mental issue. From what I was told, Ten Hag was prepared to be more candid about why Sancho was out of the fold for so long, but was clearly advised against it, or that there was certainly an element of confidentiality about it, which he's fully respected. So sometimes you are limited as to how much you can cover a certain player, and you are pretty much just relying on what the manager says about him at a press conference. And Sancho has been topical for quite some time now. Certainly we asked about him in Spain. I think it became more of a story clearly when he wasn't in the training squad that went out to Cadiz, because the expectation was that it would be that he would train the Netherlands and he would go to Spain. It didn't work out that way, and so this has been a long gestating period for him to come back into the team. And there's always going to be greater interest around, certainly in this country, around an England international, and one who didn't get in the World Cup squad, but was one of those three players who unfortunately didn't convert their penalty in the shootout of the Euros final defeat to Italy in 2021. You only have to look at Saka and Rashford, how they're playing at the moment, and it's fair to say that their form is world class, whereas Sancho has not played in 3 months. So it's going very well for a couple of players, but not so well for him. But it's easy to forget that this time last year Rashford was not in a very good way at all form wise, and we thought he was going to be able to kickstart his season with a couple of goals against Brentford and West Ham, and it didn't turn out to be that way. He didn't actually score again for the rest of the season. So there is still time for Sancho to have an impact on this season. You only have to go back to last year. He had a brilliant spell in February and March. That was by far and away his best spell of form, and that came after a little break where he missed a couple of games because there was a bereavement in his family. Then it was the January internationals. That was an extra 2 weeks. He came back refreshed. He was a lot more urgent in his play, and he played consistently well for a good 6 week period, I would say. And they need that level of performance from him now, and if they've got that, then it's another option on both sides. Rashford's an immovable object, but certainly with Antony quite fitful still, it would be worth seeing how Sancho gets on the right hand side.
What sort of starting 11 do you expect to see in that case?
Heaton probably will come in, but as I said, as Rich said, Wan-Bissaka, you have to play him because Dallow's still out. I don't think Shaw will necessarily be risked if he is still unwell. I think politically it's probably smart to start Harry Maguire because nobody knew that a Manchester United captain was suspended for a semi-final in midweek until someone from Manchester United told us after we'd all seen the squad walk past. And I won't mention his name, but one of my colleagues said, "Oh, there were no surprises there," and I was like, "Yeah, no, none at all." And then I thought, well, I didn't actually see Luke Shaw, and I didn't see Harry Maguire either. So it's not great that Maguire has become that peripheral, unfortunately for him, that none of us know about a suspension or none of us recognise that he's not arrived with the squad. But you compare to Casemiro when he got his booking against Palace, and it was like the world had ended for United. When Maguire got booked against Charlton, clearly the broadcasters didn't make note of it, and very few certainly no journalists made note of the fact that he was suspended. I think somebody else said it wasn't even mentioned on the Carabao Cup's official website, which you would imagine it would be. So I think Maguire has to come in, and it's probably time for McTominay and Fred. I don't think they've actually started together since the Brighton game. Ten Hag's done a pretty good job of resisting that for almost the entirety of the season, but it's Reading in the Cup. You'd think, it should be pretty safe there. But other options, as I said, as Rich said, Fernandes probably has to start because there isn't an alternative to play at number 10 with Van der Beek out for the season. Certainly not a recognisable one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll certainly be intrigued to see how that game goes down on Saturday. But just one more thing before we bring this episode to a close. The transfer window hasn't been the most eventful for United. Of course, Jack Butland and Wout Weghorst have come through the door. But the window has just got a few more days left to run, Rich. And it looks like, while it's unlikely to be much in the term of anything in terms of incomings to Old Trafford, there'll probably be some more outgoings. There's been a few club prospects already head out on loan in the last week. Charlie Savage has gone to Forest Green. Duncan Ferguson's Forest Green, we should hastily add. I wonder why their manager got sacked. And Shola Shoretire, as apparently it's actually Shola Shoretire. That's how the Bolton announcer announces it, and that's how he said it on an Instagram post announcing his signing. So I think, I certainly may have been saying it wrong all this time, so I can only apologise. He has gone to Bolton Wanderers, Rich, and it looks like Mort will be heading out the door before the window closes.
Murph, you take the Bolton platform now, and you tell us how Shoretire's been doing.
I tell you what, he made his debut against Derby. We lost. Bolton lost. I'm a Bolton fan, full disclosure. Sorry, don't lynch me, please. And he made his first start against Forest Green, and he was very impressive. And speaking solely as a kind of Bolton fan, we sold best star player, Dapo Afolayan, to St. Pauli. If you're going to go to any club, At least it's them. And Afolayan was brought in to replace him, and it was quite to get a kid who's played 8 senior appearances and none for quite a while, to replace your best player was quite, as a fan, quite a kind of deflating one. But he came in to start against Forest Green, a bit of an injury crisis up front for Bolton, and he did really well, surprisingly so. His first senior start, full stop, I believe. He in the first half an hour when Bolton still had 11 men, he was really surprisingly really good on the ball. I thought really quick, really going, moved in deep, was quick on the turn, bringing it forward. Some nice through balls for the attackers. Bolton play a 3-5-2, but still try and play quite attacking. And he did really well in that kind of attacking midfield role. Really nice on the ball. But I think what was even more impressive, and Ian Evatt, the manager, said as much as well afterwards, Bolton went down to 10 men on the half an hour mark, and I couldn't believe it. An actual real life, seen with my own eyes, a case of mistaken identity, as Elias Kachunga punched Forest Green defender in the stomach, and Dion Charles, the goal scorer, got dismissed. I couldn't believe it. In then, when Bolton were down to 10 men back against the wall, he really put in a shift. He stayed on the pitch for the next 40 minutes, I want to say, and put in a real kind of defensive display, was dug in deep in the midfield, put in some good challenges, and already, he's still only 18. I think it's easy to forget that. He made his debut so young, and I think maybe a few people, probably me included, had kind of written his chances at United off, just because he'd made his debut so young, had the limelight hoisted upon him, and to never do anything else pretty much afterwards. You kind of think, Mainoo comes in, Garnacho comes in, Elanga comes in, all of them overtake him. You kind of think he's kind of in the discarded pile, but he's come in, his first senior appearance, and he's done really well. If he can continue to kick on in that regard, there might be a good chance for him yet. But as I was asking you before you put the limelight on me, he's probably not going to be the only one to leave before the deadline day tolls.
No, like you said there, it is relentless, the production line at United, that a new youngster comes around every 2-3 months or so, don't they? And last summer it was Iqbal. He was the hot property, and now it's Mainoo in the same position. Slightly different role, but yeah, you can quickly become sort of last week's news in terms of the youth system. But they're all highly rated, and United are very aware that different players take different times to sort of bloom and to reach their potential. So what United are saying, and what the word is, that anyone who leaves this month has to be getting regular minutes, otherwise there's no point sending them out on loan. You might as well keep them for the youth team and oversee their development yourself. And I'd say the one most likely to leave before deadline day is Charlie McNeill. He really wants to get out and play some proper football, but people close to him have said that it is all about playing. They're not too bothered about what level he goes to. They want League One or League Two if they can, but it's understood there was a bit of, I think, even lower end championship interest in him, but he wasn't going to be playing every week. He's not going to be trusted to be put into a relegation dogfight, so it's not a healthy environment for him to actually play in. So for United, anyone who leaves has to be matched with a club that is similar to United's in terms of playing style, but they have to be promising them and assuring them that they're going to be playing every week. Otherwise, there's just no point going out. And Iqbal's an interesting one because, it's believed there's an interest from him to get out and play some football, but United are very coy to actually let him go, because as Ten Hag's hammered home, and he said in his press conference on Friday, they have a lot of games coming up and they need to use this squad, and there could be roles, and it only takes United one suspension, one injury, and Iqbal will suddenly be relied upon on the bench more so, and he could be getting some game time as well. The other one's Deschamps Bernard, who you forget is even around at the moment. I think he's 22 or 23. He's not even a youngster anymore. Bjorn Hardley is another one who could leave. He's someone who's sort of gone under the radar, and I'm told that there's other players, maybe smaller sort of academy players, less known players who could go out, similar to Oyedele, who went to Altrincham on these sort of kind of work experience loans, where they can, because it's not the Football League, they can play for a non-league team but still play for United at youth level and still train there. So I'm told there could be a couple of more of them that go through if it sort of comes off, but they've got to be very specific deals, because they've got to be playing for a non-league team who can give them minutes, but then also have the option of playing for United at academy level as well. So they're not easy to sort of organise those loans, but United would be interested in a few more. And I think that's it, really. I mean, Samuel can maybe fill you in on first team departures, but it's just, there's a lot of variables, really. And again, United's point of view is they've got so many games coming up that they don't really need to get rid of anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Samuel, please take it away if there's anything happening in either direction in the first team, but I can't imagine it's going to be too hectic in the last couple of days of the window.
No, mercifully not. Brandon Williams would like to get out on loan. I suppose his situation is somewhat complicated in that a fullback has been taken ill, another fullback is injured, so at the moment he's third choice fullback, which he probably wouldn't have thought was ever going to be a possibility, but that's just how quickly things can change in football. Realistically, though, he's not going to get a kick, or hardly get a kick, between now and the end of the season. Shaw he's only been unwell. Dalot, you would think maybe before the end of the month. Sorry, not before the end of the month. At the start of next month, he should be okay. The word isn't that his muscular injury isn't exactly long term. Maybe they didn't do as great a job reintegrating him back into the team, given that he had been out for about 3 weeks, I think it was, after doing his hamstring during the World Cup. But Williams needs games. He played relatively regularly in the Premier League last season. I certainly don't think he would get a Premier League loan at this stage, and although he has been fit for a couple of months now, he's not exactly been involved with United a great deal. He came on very late on against Burnley in the League Cup last month, but I highly doubt many people recall that. I certainly had completely forgotten that until I looked at his soccer-based stats this week and realised that he had actually played one game this season. And with Iqbal, he's another one who'd like to go out on loan. Again, the club the compelling case for him is that Kobbie Mainoo is effectively overtaken him in the midfield pecking order, and he made his full debut against Charlton in the previous round of the League Cup. You'd have thought that was the incentive for United to say, okay, he can go out on loan, and the word plateau has been used about Iqbal's development, that they don't see a problem with him training with the first team. Again, he's another player who's still 19, I believe, so he's not, I think people think he's probably older than that because he made his debut 13 months ago under Rangnick, and he went on the pre-season tour as well, and he has trained with the first team for pretty much the entirety of the season. But it is getting to the point where he's starting to think that his position is to the detriment of his development, in that there have been some under-21 games this season that he's been pulled out of because he might be needed for the first team, and then when the first team have played the next night, he's not been included in the squad. He's been the 21st man, effectively. So I don't really see the harm in letting him go out on loan, especially as they've got Mainoo around now. He's pretty much fully permanently in the first team squad, given that he's been training with them all the time, it feels like, since the training camp in Spain, and he was getting a look in a little bit before then. So beyond Williams and Iqbal, I can't really see many other outgoings on loan. Ten Hag said in relation to Pellistri today, he said that him coming on against Forest was a signal, effectively, that he was going to stay. If you go off that logic, Elanga also came on. There was and has been interest in him, but the fact that he came on midweek would indicate that he's going to stick around. And also, one of probably the most interesting club in taking him on loan were Everton, and of course, unsurprisingly, their manager is sacked, and somehow I can't see him really fitting into a Sean Dyche relegation dogfight team at this stage.
No, I'm sure Dyche is just gutted that Weghorst has already got a new club. But you were bang on about Iqbal. Then I've actually looked into that today. He's only played 8 games in any kind of age group this season, because I say he's kind of just in a purgatory. He's almost too good for the under-21s at this point, but not quite good enough for the seniors. So it does seem like it'd be great for him to go out on loan. But time will only tell on that front. There's still 3 or 4 days left in the transfer window, and of course, if you want to keep up to date on everything that does happen or doesn't present, in fact, in the window. You know where to go. It's over at manchestereveningnews.co.uk/Manchester United. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will bring this episode of the Manchester is Red podcast to a close. Thank you all very much for listening, and I will do my job now, Rich. Thank you very much. If you want to watch this show in living colour and see the bed that Rich is desperately trying to get rid of, so give him a holler, just go over to our brand new YouTube channel. You've kind of been going over there in droves. We're already over 1,000 subscribers now, so if you'd like to add to that list and see all the great content that is going on over there, then that we'd be very much appreciative. That is Manchester Evening News -Man United. Of course, you can get us on Twitter at Man United MEN, and our Facebook page is Manchester Evening News -Manchester United, and get all that sweet content over there. But until next week, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about United versus Reading, it's goodbye for now. Ta-ra.